I can see people coming in. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Raquel. Hello, Andreas. Elisa, hello. How are you? It's always so nice when you see everybody coming in and you know everyone's names. And I just always say, I wish we were all in a lovely conference room somewhere where we could all be together, but we will be at some point. I am absolutely delighted to introduce you today to Priyamvada Majumdar of Helma International. Priya, thank you so much for doing this. This has had the biggest take up of any of the briefings that we've done so far. So clearly it's a subject that fascinates people. So thank you so much. Just to say to everybody who's come in, because obviously you can't speak, if you'd just like to say hello in the chat box, say where you're from, that would be great. I'm Dom Tidy. I'm sitting in my home office in the UK. Priya, where are you?
Hi, thank you, Dom. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this session of Practical Guide to Understanding Indians. I'm sitting at home, joining in, and I think it's nice to have so many friendly faces and names join in. I would like to actually first thank the EuRA board, Dom, for giving me this opportunity and for creating this platform for knowledge sharing for its members. And I think this is quite important and useful for all of us. Dom says that there are 230 participants, so no pressure, I suppose. I think it goes to show, as Dom was saying, that the Indian client is now playing a significant role in the global mobility industry. And all of you have a thirst to know more about the Indian culture. And I truly hope that I don't disappoint. So Dom, let me know if I can start. And
thank you very much indeed. Absolutely. I'll just say one more quick thing. If you have any questions throughout Priyam's presentation, you can use the Q&A button. You can hover your mouse across the bottom of the screen and just press the Q&A button. That will allow Minnie, our technical expert who's in the background, that will allow you to, if you like a question, it will push it up in the rankings. So if it's a question that you would also like to ask, press the thumbs up signal and that will push it to the top. Otherwise, yes, please go ahead. It's great to have you here. Thank you again, Priya.
So thank you again, Dom. I'll just begin with a little bit about myself. So I work for Helma International and I've worked there for 11 years. I have my certification in intercultural training. And in fact, the content of this training came about when I conducted a cross-cultural training for Indian assignees going to work in France. And I did a similar training for my French colleagues who were going to receive them. In doing so, I realized the challenges of both the groups. So for today's presentation in the next 45 minutes, and I have my timer for that, what I have done is I've taken my learnings and I have created a practical guideline that is customized, especially for DSPs and RMCs who work with Indians. Finally, just as with all intercultural training programs, I will be sharing and speaking about cultural traits of an entire people. And thus, the examples and the insights that I share should be taken as a general rule and may not be applicable in every single scenario. So with that, let's see what we are going to cover today. So we are going to go over 5 different topics. First, who is an Indian? What are the key values? How to get your message across, especially this is meant for salespeople within your organizations. Pro tips for pre-arrival and post-arrival guidance, and this is for your field consultants. The yes and the no in the Indian culture, and the Q&A at the end, which will be moderated by Dom. I thought it might be a good idea to begin today's session with by sharing my first cultural shock when I traveled abroad for the first time. I was 24. My organization was sending me to France. They had given me a lot of advice on what to expect. And then I arrived, and this was my hotel, and I looked outside, and it wasn't what I was expecting at all. It was summer, the room did not have a fan, and the window did not have grills. And frankly, I was paranoid. because I had to keep my windows open. And in India, all our windows have grills. I was so worried that someone would enter. I kept a suitcase just below the window with a bunch of keys on it, just in case if someone entered, they would trip over it. I put my deodorant and a lighter under my pillow. Thank God I didn't have to use any of those. But it just goes to illustrate that sometimes the little things that we take for granted in our culture can be quite a shock for people coming from another country. Having said that, let's move on and see who is an Indian. So I've taken pictures of typical Indian faces, and I'm sure you've met them all when you have worked with Indian assignees. Just to say that India is a diverse country, I think really is quite an understatement. So here are a few figures for you. There are 5 ethnic groups indigenous to India, 6 major religions, 22 languages, 720 dialects, 1.3 billion people, and a national election that lasts 36 days or takes 36 days to complete without any recount. So that is what the Indian diaspora is. Now, to look at it a little bit more closely, what are the factors that impact an Indian person, or what are the factors that make an Indian an Indian? There is the region and religion, the socio-economic background, the education level, and the family values. Of these 4, I would say that family values have the strongest impact on how an Indian perceives the environment around him and interacts with him. Just to give you an example, that in the same neighborhood, you can have families of similar education and socioeconomic background, but with vast differences in family values and ideologies when it comes to equality, morality, and tolerance. And why is this important for you to know? This is because if you are receiving assignees, let's say from Bangalore, 2 assignees from the same company, same job profile, same educational background, their reaction to the host city and the host culture, their ability to adapt, and your interaction with them or your experience of interaction with them might be completely different based on the family values. I would like to go over a few facts that might be helpful for you before I move on to the next segment, which is about the key common values that bind Indians, because that truly is helpful to you. While we are a diverse country, there are common values that bind us, and you can use that knowledge to your advantage when communicating with Indians. So the facts first. The official languages in India are Hindi and English. India does not have a national language. 8% of the population have passports. 10% of the population speak English, which means that you meet a very small representation of the entire population. Measurement, and this is something important. In India, it's the metric system. So it's kilometers and kilograms, except when it comes to surface area. So when you're making proposals for property and houses, it might be a good idea to quote them in square feet and not in square meters. Finally, we have 3 types of calendars in India. The solar one, which is January to December. The lunar one, which is for the festivals in India, and that is why the festivals are on different dates. So Dussehra, Diwali would be on different dates on every year. And then we have the fiscal calendar, which is for income tax, which is from April to March. Now, here's one of the important slides of the presentation, the key common values. There are, I must admit, other common values that bind Indians, but for the purpose of this presentation and given the time at hand, I have chosen 2, karma and trust. What is karma? I mean, you all know what karma is. So just to give a quick definition, it is our actions today impact the good or bad luck that is to come in the future. Or simply put, what goes around comes around. Trust, and I don't have to explain to you about that. I think it's an intrinsic part of Indian culture, whether in professional life or in personal life. Having said that, let's move on to how do you get your message across, especially at the first stage when you're interacting with Indian mobility managers. This is for your sales team. Here are some proposal pro tips for the team to help get the message across. Go pictures. Infographics are your friends, and there are two reasons for it. First, you should know you may not be aware who your real target audience is. Most often we think it's just the mobility team, but sometimes your proposals, our proposals are passed on to the HR and the recruitment team. They are the ones who are selecting the talent who would be sent to the host country. Then there is, of course, the procurement team for the pricing bit. And then there is the business unit head or the delivery manager who sits in the host country and would be receiving the talent, would be receiving the assignees and onboarding them. Perhaps, apart from the mobility team, the rest of the departments have a varying degree of knowledge of mobility and immigration. And this is why it is important to have a snapshot or an infographic when you send the proposal. You can support it with long texts and lengthy documents detailing your services and other criteria or information that you need to send, but please have the first few pages in an infographic. When it comes to immigration and work permits per se, I would suggest that you put it up like a snapshot. I have created a template for you here. In a tabular format, for instance, you have the 4 work permit types, and here you have the different criteria. For instance, is it an ICT? What would be the duration of work allowed? Is sponsorship required by the host entity? The contract location for that work permit type. Now, why is this important? Because irrespective of who is reading your proposal and finally who is deciding to whether choose you as a DSP or not, this tabular format gives them gives a clarity, quick clarity for the reader. The second reason why I would suggest that you have your proposals in tabular formats, in snapshots, in infographics, is just like me. For a lot of us, even those who are part of the audience today, English is not our mother tongue. And therefore, if we simply have lengthy text explaining service details or permits information, people just might get lost in the information. And this is something that helps them. Karma in mobility. Now, who would have thought of that? So, how can you use karma in mobility and why is that important? Once you have prepared your proposal, this is my suggestion, that you end it with what are the consequences of non-compliance? Let's say for immigration, for example. Will the company be blacklisted? Would there be penalties to be paid? Would the assignee be deported? Why is it important? Because it helps the Indian client who is used to the concept of karma to understand the framework within which they have to work and what the future might hold if they step outside that framework. The same applies for relocation services. For instance, penalties must be indicated, and I'll give you an example about that. I had gone to visit my friend in Hofheim, which is in Germany, and we were meeting after 10 years. So we were so happy, we were hugging and shouting and laughing loudly. And then she said, but no, Priyam, you cannot laugh this loudly. The neighbors might complain and I might have to pay a penalty. We are allowed to laugh loudly and make noise on Saturdays during warm lunch. Now, this is not something that Indians understand easily because it's not applicable in India. So if this is applicable in the city that you represent, it is something that you must highlight to the assignees. The next is loss of security deposit. And this is during property viewing or during settling in. It is important for the relocation consultant to point out the importance of maintenance and cleanliness and the impact of not doing that it can have on the loss of security deposit or the percentage that might get lost. Finally, opportunity loss. So This training program that I'm doing today have done with at least 20 other DSPs. And I have learned a lot on the way while doing this training. And one of the DSPs pointed out that during the property viewing, systematically there were a group of Indians who would arrive late, and this would unnerve the brokers. Please feel free, therefore, that when you share the itinerary, to write at the end that we would request you to be on time, because if you are late, it is possible that the broker will not wait, and we will therefore not be able to see the property, or I would have to uh, request an additional day from your HR. This is something Indians understand. I move on now to gaining trust of Indian assignees. And this, we will spend some time on this because this is very important. And believe me, when you gain trust of Indian clients or Indian assignees, I think there is a saying in India which means "Sat khun maaf," which means 7 murders will be forgiven. So what it means is that once you gain the trust of your client, not only do you have a long client who will stay with you for a long time, they are forgiving clients. So to begin with, in order to gain trust of your assignee, it is important to step into their shoes. And for that, it is important that you see what the Indian assignees perceive, because Indian assignees see procedures or see lifestyle or judge procedures of lifestyle in the host country based on references they have in India. I begin with government procedures. Indian assignees and sometimes even Indian mobility managers believe that connections trump red tape. And why is that? It is because I'm told in India, we have inherited the concept of red tape from the British, which means files are moved from table to table. Sometimes they are delayed. Sometimes between the cups of chai, the file falls through the crack. And if you have the right connections, and I don't mean bribe, I mean pull the right connections, you can then help move the file faster to get the result that you desire. And this is why Indian assignees and clients often expect that of DSPs or RMCs. If it is similar to a situation in India in your country, then well and good. If it isn't, then please indicate that to the Indian client that the timeline indicated on the website by the government is the standard timeline. Should I try to intervene or influence in any way, it might impact the processing negatively than otherwise. The next is field consultant are rainmakers. Now, Indians believe that field consultants, with a snap of their fingers, can negotiate with the landlord, can get the plumber when they need it, the electrician, the utility connections, whenever they need. It may not be the case. And why do they have this expectation? It is my understanding that in India, the expectation that Indian clients have of Indian service providers is much higher than what European clients have of European service providers. It is because in Europe, as long as service providers perform within the scope of work, the client is satisfied. In India, often you have to go the extra mile. You must be willing to be available all the time. You must be willing to negotiate. And there are a lot more unwritten things that come with good service, especially being available, being committed, to show your commitment. Another thing in India is the construction industry. With it, the plumbers and electricians are under the unorganized labor workforce, which means that if you have the right connections, you can get plumbers and electricians whenever you want. And if you don't have the right connections, you don't get them anytime soon that is required. So if in the country that you provide services in, if plumbers and electricians fall under the unorganized labor workforce, then the expectation of the Indian assignee would be that you have the good connections to get the plumbers and electricians on time. But if it is a country where there is a system and a process and they fall under the organized workforce, there is a ticket time or ticketing system or a waiting period, please indicate that to the Indian assignees. The next is budget allocation. And I think this is something Indian assignees are seeing more and more. They see that foreign expatriates, when they come to India, they have a far bigger budget than when Indians go abroad. They stay in the gated communities, the villa, the pool, the maid, the nanny, the driver. But when Indian assignees go abroad, the 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 budget that they have is a small lump sum and they have to figure it out themselves, or a very basic relocation package. And sometimes as DSPs and RMCs, because we are the mouthpiece of the mobility or the HR team, we have the difficult task of explaining the policy to the assignees. Finally, the first world country. Now, I think of all the things, this is one of the biggest culture shocks that Indians have when they travel to a first world country. They believe that a first world country means more luxury and less do it yourself, less DIY. More luxury, more space, there will be more resources to clean the house, reaching office will be easier. And then let's say they land up in a city, perhaps like Paris, where the apartments are smaller than in India. You have to take the public transport to go to work, and it might take an hour. And all the household chores have to be done by yourself. So this is something that comes across as a shock, that this is a first world country and it's less luxurious than in India. Next is understanding what Indian assignees feel. The first is, of course, excitement, because this is a project abroad. It means a lot for the career. It's a new experience, but it's closely followed by anxiety. And this is because a majority of Indian assignees do not have the budget or the access to intercultural training, and therefore go rather unprepared to the host country. And the second reason for the anxiety is, as you are aware, Indian assignees require entry visas for almost all countries in the world, which means that the passport is submitted to the consulate and then it's just to wait and watch, except perhaps for US visas where you know directly on the date of your interview whether you're going to get the visa or not. So the wait and watch period, what happens is often the HR or the mobility manager tells the assignee, you will be traveling anytime in the next 2 weeks as soon as you get your visa. So there is a very short time for the assignee to adjust or to prepare themselves for this trip abroad. The key fears that the assignees have is of looking stupid. They don't know what is a good question or a bad question to ask, and as a result, they don't ask the question at all. Of standing out, literally, of racism, of the unknown, the weather, the food, and the language. There is also a hesitation in the mind of the assignees because they know that the home search might be done by women. Now, it just so happens that the majority of the Indian assignees traveling abroad are men, and a vast percentage of relocation field consultants are women. And they have to discuss domestic topics with an unknown woman. Now, what can you do to help the assignees prepare better? And that's where pre-arrival guidance comes. My suggestion is that the first contact with assignees should be via a call and not a mail. What do I mean by that? You can use an email for introduction and then set a time up for the call. Get on a call, and it doesn't have to be a one-to-one. You can have it with a group of assignees who are scheduled to arrive in the next 2 months. Speak up, introduce yourself, talk about the credentials of your company, and then your services, and a host of other things that we will discuss in the following slides. Once this call is over, follow it up with the minutes of the meeting that summarizes the points in the call, and you can send your pre-arrival questionnaire to understand better the needs of the assignees. Why is the call important? It is because India has a heritage of an oral culture. What does that mean? The Indus Valley civilization took place 3000 BCE. The first script, or the Vedas, were written in 1500 BCE. So for a good 1500 years, knowledge was passed on from one generation to another verbally. Even today, in Hinduism in India, Hindu traditions, practices, knowledge is passed on from grandparent to grandchild or father to child verbally, not through reading books. And this is a culture that has percolated into professional space. So if you come to an Indian office, you will often see colleagues standing by cubicles of each other discussing an email just to reconfirm what has already been written, because we Indians are a hear and understand culture more than a read and understand culture. And this is also the reason why a lot of your clients, you may have experienced, call you up to ask exactly the same information that you have already communicated in an email. It is because they need confirmation orally. What must you include in the call? I think one of the things to include and address is one of the things to do is to do expectation management, because assignees who may never have traveled abroad may expect an apartment like so. And finally, they may get an apartment like this, and they may think that they are getting a bad deal. So it is important that you have a Zoom meeting now that it has become so common, and show sample apartments that are available in the market within that budget. There's something else that I would like to point out. In India, for instance, when you have a 1-bedroom apartment, you have 1 bathroom. A 2-bedroom has 2 bathrooms. A 3-bedroom has 3 bathrooms, which isn't the case always in the West. And especially if a large family is traveling together, or if there are many assignees going to stay, or a couple of assignees going to stay together in an apartment, this must be addressed and highlighted, that there might be just 1 bathroom for the entire apartment. And it isn't that they are getting a bad deal. This is the market situation for properties. The next is the cost of utilities. So I let you look at this picture. This is something you will never see in India. People wearing sweaters indoors. Even in the coldest part of India, when there is heating, indoor heating, the heating is always cranked up to 24 degrees Celsius. So we wear cotton clothes. At the most, we will wear woolen socks. But we will not be wearing sweaters indoors. I think it's a bit like how it is in Sweden or Denmark. But if in your country, the norm is that people wear sweaters indoors and use the heating only when the outside temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, please inform that to the assignees. Show them a sample utility bill so that they are aware how quickly that goes up when they use the thermostat, or if the thermostat is turned up to 24 degrees Celsius, so that they are mentally prepared. The next is distance, and this is for assignees who are traveling with children. In India, strollers are used for children up to the age of 3, and that too for very short distances. After a while, the parents just carry the child, they get into a car, and they go from point A to point B. However, if the assignee is coming to a city where they have to use public transportation or metros, it might be a good idea to indicate to them that there is a lot to walk, not only from one metro to another, but within one metro as well. And it is often a common practice, in fact, that I have noticed as well, that children up to the age of 5 sit in a stroller and are taken by their parents because the distances are too great for the children to walk or the parents to carry them. So this might be a good advice to tell them during the pre-arrival discussion. And finally, you have the pre-arrival question for assignees. My advice here would be that for preparation of your field consultants, it is important that they know what is the amenities usage pattern of the assignees back home in India, because it will help your field consultants to then know whether they need to spend more or less time explaining appliances during settling in. Over and above these questions and this table, it might be a good idea to also ask the assignee whether they have traveled to other or worked in other foreign countries before. Now, it is important for the field consultant to know whether the assignee that you will be receiving is a home outsourcer. That means they do not know how to use any of the appliances, not necessarily because they do not have them, it is because they have never operated them or cleaned them. Or whether the assignee is a home freelancer. A home freelancer might be an assignee who knows how to use a vacuum cleaner, an iron, and the stove, but do not know how to use a washing machine. So if, as a relocation consultant, you don't have this information in advance and you're explaining an assignee that, look, this washing machine requires detergent powder and not liquid, it is already 3 steps ahead, because I think what they need to know is that they have to segregate their clothes based on color. So you know, you have to understand from which step you have to guide the assignees. And finally, is the assignee a home contributor, which means that the assignee knows how to use all the appliances and how to clean them as well. Once you have this information, and once the assignees have the pre-arrival guidance call, I'm hoping that both parties are prepared better for the post-arrival services. And with that, we come to the first day of meet and greet. Here is the key to trust building, your first meet and greet with the Indian assignee. And I would suggest that you begin with the famous Indian small talk. Now, what do I mean by that? I would say you should not be transactional. Let me give you an example. Suppose I am the relocation consultant and I say, hi, my name is Eliza. I'm your relocation consultant. And here is the itinerary that we will be following today. Now that would be transactional. What is small talk? Hi, my name is Eliza. I'm your relocation consultant. And before I get into the itinerary of today, I just wanted to know how your flight was and if you have settled in well in your temporary accommodation. I understand from your file that your family is back home in India and they are not going to be traveling anytime soon. If you wish, I can show you some excellent souvenir shops which are close by where you can buy gifts for them when you go back home. Now, that's some kind of a small talk. This helps the assignee understand that you care about the assignee more than you care about the job. And that helps, that is one of the building blocks in trust building. Next is sharing knowledge. And of course, this is true for anybody. If you have good domain knowledge, you gain trust of the other person. The third is showing commitment. And these are the 3 secret weapons of winning over an Indian client: negotiation, availability, and connections. It is possible that you don't have all 3, or you have 3 in varying degrees, but these are your secret weapons to gaining their trust. Wishing Indian clients and assignees during festivals and birthdays is also a big plus because they feel that you remember them. We move on now to a little more of a practical guidance to what Indian clients or assignees see when they do property search, and some tips for your relocation consultants. So this is typically a kitchen and a bathroom in a Western country. And this is a kitchen in India. You will notice that the wall is tiled, which means if there is oil or water splatter, it's not a problem at all. You can wipe it off. Second, there is granite on the countertop, which means that a hot wok or a hot pressure cooker can be taken out of fire and placed on the granite and it will not get burnt, which isn't the case here because the countertop is wooden. And because the automatism for Indians is to just put it on the countertop, it might be a good idea for relocation consultants to highlight that fact so that they remember not to put it on the wooden countertop. Here is an Indian bathroom. You will notice again that it is tiled wall to wall, and there is a drain in the floor. And what you don't see here is a ventilator or a fan, which means there is little chance of mold and mildew. All the water on the floor is drained out, and there is a fan to dry the bathroom out. However, in a lot of Western bathrooms, the drain is only in the bathtub or in the bathing area and not common to the entire floor. This is something I would suggest that you point out to the Indian assignee. And you also raise the point about mold and mildew which is not very common in India due to ventilator and the sun. This is a consequence of keeping the bathroom floor wet. Here's something that you should know about India's relationship with sun and water. Indians believe that the sun kills all bacteria. That is why, even though there is a washing machine that dries the clothes, Indians might take the clothes out and put it near the windows or in the balcony because they believe the bacteria will be killed. However, if this is not allowed in your country, you must highlight that and reassure the assignee that the washing in the washing machine and drying 100% in the washing machine does indeed kill the bacteria. The second is the water. In India, it is believed that one cleans with water, and that is why the bathroom floor is cleaned with water. And then you put on the ventilator and it dries. But this isn't the case in the West. A clean bathroom is a dry bathroom. And this must be again highlighted, especially during settling in by the relocation consultant. In terms of explaining how the appliances work, because this can be a challenge, my suggestion is stop the handbook of instructions. It's quite tedious to read it. It's a lot more preferable if you share YouTube link of how to use those gadgets and how to clean them, or you can put QR codes on each appliance and let the assignee scan it whenever they need, and they can see how to use the appliance or operate it. Or finally, you can hang pictorial guides of how to clean and use the appliance, especially dishwasher, which is uncommon in an Indian kitchen, or the oven. With that, we come nearly to the last part of our session today. These are communication tips, both verbal and written. I'll begin with the yes. You may have noticed that sometimes, even though you have asked the assignee, have you understood? And they have said yes. And then you realize that they really have not understood what you have told them. It is because sometimes when Indians say yes, they mean yes, I hear you, and not necessarily yes, I understand you. And in order to avoid a miscommunication, my suggestion is that you have an open-ended question. For instance, was I clear? If you would like, we can go over it all over again, once again. And then you might have a more clear or honest answer from your assignee. If, however, you end the session, your question with your sentence with a okay, all right, is it fine? And the assignee says yes, it may not be yes, I understand. It just means yes, I hear you. So to avoid all ambiguity, use an open-ended question. And then we have the famous no. So in India, the word no, don't, cannot, impossible are considered extremely rude and aggressive. However, in the relocation industry, as we know, not everything is in our control, and sometimes we have to say something difficult or break the bad news. So I have taken a few examples and scenarios to show how you can say no without saying it. So the first example is if, as relocation company, you're unable to find an apartment that is close to the workplace of the assignee. Here is a email that you could send. Apartments that are near your office have already been taken. We will keep a close watch in case any apartments are vacated. Till then, I hope you like your current apartment. It is a location where XYZ or the other assignees, for example, live, and they take the metro to work. You see, we have passed on the message without saying the word no and giving a little bit of hope, because of course in life, nothing is impossible. So this message will be taken much better than if you simply say, I'm sorry, apartments are just not available. The next one. If assignees ask for services which are out of scope, here's something that you can write. Unfortunately, your current company policy does not allow us an additional day of assistance. Put it on the company. If your HR department sends us new information, we would be happy to help. The message here is the company policy does not allow, but we are happy to help. And finally, and this is an important one, is when in India, silence is seen as either ignorance, defiance, or avoidance. So let me give you a little example. So one day, I was working on an RFP with my CEO, Guilain, he's French, and I gave him a suggestion or an idea, and then he went silent. And I was taken aback, and I Skyped Elisa, who is my French boss in India, but who understands intercultural gaps, having worked in India for so long. Elisa, do you think Guilain is angry with me? Why has he gone silent? So I think Elisa must have messaged something to Guilain, because Guilain replied back, no, I'm just thinking. Now, this is something you will not see in India. Even during verbal communication, not only there is interruption, you will rarely see a silence unless the person is angry or does not know. How does that translate to email communication? When you get emails from an Indian client and you don't respond immediately, it is possible, and you may have experienced it, that you get repeated calls of follow-up. Have you read my mail? Are you working on it? It is because in the mind of the Indian assignee, there are two things that happen. First, that the person has not read my mail, or second, the person is putting me in queue and not putting enough importance to my mail. So what I would suggest is either acknowledge, say, I have read your mail and we are working on it, or you can say something like this: please allow us 2 or 3 working days to respond, as we wish to gather information not only from experts, but verify updates from government authorities as well. This will at least help the Indian assignee know, or the Indian client know, that you're working on it, and you're unlikely to get several phone calls of follow-up. With that, I come to the end of my session. I would just like to finish with Helma's extended training program. Over and above this training that we've had the opportunity, thanks to EuRA, to present to you all, we also have sessions where we do role play with on-site consultants on a pre-arrival call or for the meet and greet. We have a help desk to help you review email templates, proposals, and questionnaires, and understand escalations with Indian clients. And finally, we offer training programs called the Survival Guide to Living Abroad for Indian assignees going to work abroad. And it is something we can do for your clientele as well. So with that, over to you, Dom. I think my timer is just on time.
That was absolutely perfect. Priyam, thank you so much. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And so many incredibly usable actual tips of how that, I mean, it's the essence of intercultural understanding that, you know, we have this information sitting in the background, and there was an awful lot there that I did not know. And I like to think that I'm quite interculturally aware. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, do you have any questions? Please either pop them into the chat box there or into the Q&A. That was an absolute, and obviously I will be sending out the recording of Priyam's session on Thursday. So as soon as I get that edited and up onto YouTube, I will send you all the links, so you will be able to go back to it. But that was fascinating. There were so many things. Minnie and I were just texting in the background about things like the heating, and never think, look, I'm sitting inside wearing a fleece and a sweater. You know, that's something I would never have considered. So that was fascinating. And I wanted to ask you, actually, does it work the other way around? Because I remember when I was in Goa with you, the air conditioning in the hotel was absolutely freezing.
I could.
Wasn't it?
No, because yes, we like the AC on, because we have a lot of sun, Dom. So
absolutely,
we like when it's windy and cold, I suppose. And I think also it works both ways. We have seen, and I think it's Anita from Move One who told me that when Indian assignees go to countries like Dubai, and they have been allocated, they want houses with a swimming pool, and they're shocked when they see the utility bill or the maintenance bill of the pool, because they don't expect it. Are there any questions, Dom? I'll be happy to. take them on.
And there's lots of really lovely comments coming through the chat box. Very interesting presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Shirley. It's great to see you both well. Eric, Sylvie, thank you, Prem. It's very informative. Wonderful tips. How to address with the assignees. Now that is an interesting question. And funnily enough, I've had that come up before. So this a long time ago in London, I remember being at a seminar. So how to address with the assignees the issue around the smell of the delicious cooking of the curry.
Okay, this is a very good question. So the first thing, I think it does not strike Indian assignees that the smell of the spices stick to furniture. This is something that I learned when I went and stayed with my friend in London. This is because in India, we open our windows when we cook, and the kitchen also has a ventilator. The kitchen also has a door that you can close. So it does not stick to furniture. Secondly, I think when you're having spices every day, you are so used to it, you don't realize it. So how do you address it? You may want to say that in that apartment, there is no ventilator, especially during winter months, since you have to keep everything closed, the smell remains, and it then, the smell stays on the furniture tops. Once you explain that, and the fact that if the smell remains, or if it sticks, and if, let's say, the landlord comes for a visit, I don't know, this might impact in any way his opinion of the assignee, or his willingness to extend the lease agreement for another year. That is the consequence that might be a good idea to communicate with them.
Yeah, that's really good to know. It's funny, isn't it? It's an interesting one because there's this huge vogue in Europe and in the US and in North America to have open plan living spaces, which is the absolute enemy of a cook. And I love to cook. Margarita, very interesting question. Thank you. How do I make an India assignee understand that he or she should respect my working hours without being offensive or making him?
Now that's truly a tough one, because as a service provider, I can say that just to let you know that our sales director, his WhatsApp status shows available 24/7. Now this is just the opposite that you would like to convey, and you can just simply say that as per labor laws of your country, you are simply not allowed to work longer than the required hours, because then it could impact your employer, and they may have to pay you additionally for those hours, and this might have a negative impact on you. You have to explain why you're working those extra hours, when for all other clients, you're able to finish the work within those 8-hour period. So please put it on the labor law of your country, and please explain that for the other clients, since you're able to respect those 8 hours, your employer might not see it, may not appreciate it.
That's a really good way of doing it. It's like putting it back onto the authority and to the bureaucracy and saying this is out of my control. Yeah. Another very interesting question. Thank you, Sharon Girl. How is it best to communicate that the rent isn't always negotiable?
Yes. So I think this has to also do, working with my colleagues in Germany, I learned there is something in Germany, for example, called the fair price, which does not necessarily exist in India. So I think a good way of communicating that the rent is not negotiable is, this is the market price. This is how it works across the country. And unfortunately, it is just not for Indian clients, but for all clients, it is impossible to negotiate, because the culture is so that the landlord does not negotiate. The price of the rent is set by the market rate, and there is no varying price based on goodwill of landlords.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great way of putting that. 2 questions in the Q&A. Kaja, Kristen, thank you so much. Why do Indian assignees try to avoid an apartment overlooking a cemetery?
So I think Indian assignees, a lot of them follow Vastu, which means they want apartments facing north or east, but not the cemetery. I think simply because it's a cemetery.
Yeah.
It's related to death. I think it's just that.
That's really interesting. A very, very dear friend of mine from Greece came to stay, and at the time I was living in a cottage that overlooked a cemetery, and he really was not comfortable. Really not comfortable. Maria, thank you. How can I inform the Indian assignee if their budget is too low? For example, they ask for an apartment with 2 bedrooms, but their budget is suitable for a studio.
I think here again, you have to put it on the company policy.
Yeah, yeah.
The company policy has given this budget, and as per the market rate, this is the best available. The alternative is you can go further, which means you will have to travel longer, which is a possibility. Or if you want to stay in central part of town or closer to your location of work, this is what is available in the market. And that is why the pre-arrival call is important.
Definitely. Sarah Rawlins, thank you so much. One question: when you don't hear from an assignee, or they're very late to do something, is there a reason that the assignee might not replying to you and acknowledging an email or a call? Even if it's the first contact meeting. Understood your consequences comment could be part of this, but would there be other reasons as well, maybe?
I don't know, maybe the assignee is busy. I mean, try calling the assignee. Usually calling the assignee works. When they don't reply to emails, call the assignee, or you can even WhatsApp them. That works quite well with Indian assignees. And if there is no reply, you can always put it up to the HR saying, I have tried twice by call and phone. If the assignee does not reply, unfortunately, I will not be able to set up the itinerary or set up the, I don't know, the meeting at the town hall for registration, whatever.
Thank you. Bearbell, hello. Great presentation with the reminders for the work of the assignee. Would you have any insight into the holidays or the list of days that we should really pay attention to?
So it depends from which part of India they come from. So I think Diwali and Dussehra is common again, but there are some holidays which are different from people from different states. So if you wish, you can just check online, like Karnataka holidays or Karnataka official. Don't look at bank holidays because there are lots of bank holidays, but just look at Karnataka official or work holidays and you will find the list, or Delhi work holidays and you will have the list.
Yeah, that's great, because again, like you say, it's incredibly regional. Nicole, very interesting question. When you work with a lot of Indian clients at the same time, this is quite a cultural question because obviously the cultures come from different. When you work with a lot of Indian clients at the same time and they're calling you, you don't know who you have on the phone. Names are often quite similar or difficult to pronounce or understand. For this reason, we prefer to communicate in writing rather than by phone. But you say that initial communication really has to happen in orally, right?
I think if you don't know who's calling, just ask, my name is so-and-so. Could you please let me know who's calling from which company? As we're working with several clients across the globe, I will note it down. Please spell your name and the name of your company, and that's fine. Then you know who it is.
Christina, thank you. How can I communicate to an Indian client that the landlord is not willing to do ordinary repairs to the apartment?
Oh, if the landlord is not willing to do the ordinary repairs, I would say that this should have been informed to the assignee before the signing of the lease, so that the assignee is already prepared. If it is a standard practice in your country, then please inform it. And when you say standard repairs or small repairs, there should be a definition. Is it small repairs up to 100 euros right, and anything more? If you explain that to the assignee, they will understand, but prepare them for it, that there are clauses in terms of repair works, because it exists also in India, so they will understand.
All comes back to what you said about managing expectations, which is absolutely key. Esther, thank you for your question. If an Indian employee, has a very long name, can I use a nickname? Or should I ask the employee first if I'm allowed to call him or her by a shortened name?
Yes, the second one.
Yeah, definitely. If I've missed anybody's question, I do apologize. I'm just scrolling back through the chat. I think we've covered everything.
I hope I was able to answer.
You have had, honestly, some of the most wonderful comments come through. I hope you can see them in the chat box. I will echo what Rosario has just said. Thank you very much, Priyam. It was an amazing presentation. It really was. I learned so much. I have really enjoyed it. Your style is great. And I'd love to do this again. So, let's keep in touch. I know that, we've got a series of these briefings coming up over Q1 and Q2 for next year. So it'd be great to revisit maybe some specific topics, go deeper into the concept. I loved what you said about the concept of karma being so important, and
Yes.
those kind of things are so key. So maybe we can come back to something like that. In the meantime, Priyam, thank you so much. It was
Thank you so much,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you. Oh, I just wanted to mention one thing. If you're interested, there are quite a few fellowship case studies on our website which are devoted to culture. I know one of them, Anita Meyer, did hers on the use of time, and obviously we referred to that very specifically just now. So if you go to the EuRA website, go to education, dig through, you'll find them in fellowship. But in the meantime, Priyam, lovely to see you, and thank you everybody for joining. I will be sending out the link to the recording hopefully tomorrow, but it might be Thursday because I've got quite a lot on. So yes, Susanna, you're going to get the recorded presentation. Everybody will be emailed that link on Thursday at the latest. And it will be on the YouTube channel for the world, but not for a month. It's specific to you who signed up. Priyam, thank you. Great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Minnie, thank you for everything you were doing in the background. And all that remains for me to say is the next briefing is coming up next week. That is looking at our new MIM Plus programs that are coming online in January. And then after that, the following week is what will the impact of the Biden administration be on mobility? So look out for that. I'll be sending out the links. Priyam, thank you again. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll do the traditional wave goodbye. Bye.